But on to the main story of the day. We need to try and forget Boris. One thing the Tories are doing at this conference is supposed to be, Jason, something you described this morning in the Mirror Politics newsletter as a beauty contest. I want you to think carefully about the words that you choose to input into people's brains early in the morning. Despite the fact it involves some of the people who are ugliest on the inside that the Tory party could possibly uncover, today, the front runner, Kemi Badenoch, has got herself a working mum of immigrant parents, bear in mind, in trouble with, if I've got this right, Jason, she's attacked working mums and immigrants. What is going on? What is she doing?
I mean, before we go into the whole Badenoch opening her mouth and saying stupid things bit, but I mean, it's quite a delight here, Susan.
I can't remember you're enjoying the Tory conference.
I mean, this is a party which has a slight problem with when it comes to competence. So they've decided after their worst election defeat, as I say, over 150 years, to spend 4 days arranging a scenario which basically causes as much division within the party as possible. They could not have planned it better if you dislike the Tory party. So they've got 4 contenders from his leadership, all tearing strips of each other. Now they're all doing this through aid, so it's all done by backbiting because they're not allowed to attack each other personally, but that's not stopping them briefing. There's kind of more acid being chucked around the walls of a convention centre in Birmingham than you'd get in a kind of AstraZeneca lab. It's just ridiculous. And there's kind of and they are, as I say, I mean, they could not have orchestrated this to make them seem more unappealing and more detached from a country than ever before, because they are only talking to themselves. That's the whole point of this 4 days here. There's no point in trying to actually even talk to voters who they may want to, and ask voters why they lost so badly. So they're operating this kind of hermetically sealed environment of introspection. And then Kemi, she's an interesting character because she's definitely got some personality. Unfortunately, with a personality comes this wonderful ability to say some of the kind of like most controversial things possible. One of which was in an interview with Times Radio suggested that maternity pay was, quotes, excessive.
Speaking as somebody who didn't get any maternity pay because I'm a self-employed working mum, no, it isn't.
Yeah, and we have some of the lowest rates of maternity pay of any major economic country. But she then tried to row back on this, which only made it worse by saying, and in true Kemi style, because she's incredibly abrasive, but that the words have been taken out of context. But actually, I've read them 3 or 4 times now. There's no way these words have been taken out of context. And she was specifically asked, "Are you saying that people are being paid too much maternity pay?" And she went, it's a burden on small businesses. And I do think it is a little bit excessive and it's a form of taxation. So, the words are there. She did say them.
Yeah. Richard says,
amazing. She's allowed Robert Jenrick for the first time in his life to take the moral high ground, which is just remarkable.
Welcome to the Conservative leadership race, everybody. Richard says, does anybody care which candidate will become chief grifter? Probably all the other minor grifters, and probably to some extent the Labour Party, because they want to know who they're going to be dealing with, I suppose, to some extent over the next, 10
It's actually years. A really good point, because I don't think anybody does care. And the chances of whoever is elected leader becoming prime minister are incredibly slim. And it's much more likely that they're going to go through the same process of all parties which have suffered major electoral defeats of electing totally the wrong leader and then losing an election and then finally coming to their senses and realise they actually do need to elect somebody who's actually got some sort of personal appeal. But yeah, they're quite a long way from that stage at the moment.
Yes, they don't really have a lot going in terms of personal appeal. So the main front runners, we've got Kemi, who's Kemi, who's on the stage today for a whole hour taking questions. Then we've got, before her, I think we've got Tom Tugendhat, the Tunbridge and Malling MP, who I find quite interesting, but is probably, I think, really not quite having his time, shall we say. He's probably at the back of the pack.
Well, he's one who's trying to be the moderate One Nation Tory, but he kind of, the problem is he kind of trashed his own brand right at the beginning by saying he would withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, the one thing everybody knows about Tom Tugendhat is he's a kind of pro-European who actually kind of meant to be standing up for the kind of the institutions and kind of the rule of law, which kind of which the right wingers dislike. So as soon as he did this, you were going, well, that's not genuine, because you're saying that to try and get elected rather than what you believe in. So I mean, he's got the saner Tories backing him. That's obviously
there's a diminished pool these days. Isn't
yeah. But he is trailing. So then we got him. Then we got James, not so cleverly.
The date rape joke.
Yes,
right.
The one who described the Rwanda screen as batshit, forgive my language, and then one of his first pledges in running the race was to resuscitate the Rwanda scheme. So we got Mr. Consistency as well. Now he's actually, interestingly, he's the one Labour is actually most concerned about, because he's quite he comes across as kind of quite hail fellow, well met. He's kind of as a kind of caretaker leader, he'd probably do a reasonable job, because he wouldn't do anything dramatic, but at least he looks kind of like, he could hold his own in the pub holding a pint. And
he's fairly clever, and the dispatch box against Starmer, he'd probably he'd be able to hold his own to some extent. Whereas the fourth runner is Robert Jenrick, as he's known.
Yes.
Just, I don't know. When I look at him, I just think of someone whose eyes are screaming for release.
He's what they describe as going on a journey, if you can say, getting a right-wing ticket towards the far right is a journey. So he started off as a kind of Tory moderate, and then kind of seemed to have got radicalised in the Home Office as it become this kind of immigration obsessed kind of really quite nasty right winger. Remember, he was the one who, when he was Home Office Minister, ordered these cartoons in a children's detention centre be painted over, because he wouldn't want children, obviously, who just suffer the trauma of maybe being trafficked or brought over in small boats to actually have any pleasure in their lives. He was that nasty. He was one who also signed off that very dodgy development deal from a major donor, which I think they subsequently did decide was illegal. But there you go. So he is quite controversial. The main problem with Jenrick is not just his views, but he seems to be almost devoid of any kind of warmth or kind of personality that way. I just don't think voters were ever warm to him.
No, it's just those eyes. They just they're like the eyes of hell. They're just dark.
It's kind of like the anaconda of political candidates. It's very kind of cold-blooded. But he's a front runner, and as long as Kemi keeps imploding, he's going to kind of
Well, yeah, this is the thing. She's appealing. They're all appealing to a very narrow electorate, aren't they? So it's the stale, pale, male Tory membership, generally over 60, generally male, generally middle class, generally not a fan of your migrants or your working mums, and those are the people they need to get elected by. So there's the argument, which you make in a letter this morning, that perhaps they're just saying this stuff for those people to get elected, and then when they get elected, they will do whatever it is they're going to do as leader. But have you spoken to any Tories that are worried really about how they're going to rule? Because Kemi can say this kind of stuff when she's running for the leadership, perhaps, and she can accuse, as she has done, Robert Jenrick of disagreeing with her on the working mums thing. She accused him of a pylon. She starts going, "Well, you're bullying me. You're all wrong." She's so abrasive. If she were to become leader, How is she going to lead? How is she going to unite the party?
I mean, this is the she is the kind of the most high risk of all the candidates, because she's, I mean, as I said, she definitely kind of captures attention, not necessarily for the right reasons, but she is probably the most brittle politician I've ever met. And you just wonder, she kind of, the pressure which comes with that job, where you have to actually, put yourself open to a lot of media interviews, a lot of questioning, and plus from, scrutiny from your own MPs. And you do wonder if she's has the kind of temperament to withstand that. I think there's two other fundamental problems with the Tories. I mean, well, the biggest one of all is obviously they haven't even tried to approach talking to voters yet. But they just can't decide whether they should swing further to the right to head off a threat from reform, or they should move back to the centre ground to recapture the seats from the Lib Dems. And they are in this kind of limbo at the moment, where the party has no clue which way to turn. And the wiser heads are suggesting, well, actually, the bigger problem is the Lib Dems. The Lib Dems took kind of 59 seats off the Tories at the last election, far more than Reform took off them. And actually, the more you go to the right towards Reform, the more you dislocate the centre ground for Labour and the Lib Dems. This is a party which has become more right-wing in its DNA. The membership has got, as you say, it's got older, it's got more intransigent, and its views have become more, I would say, almost radicalised, particularly this ridiculous obsession on immigration. But they see everything through the prism of this, and you've got to go, actually, if you're going to, it was interesting, Theresa May wrote an article in the Times on Saturday saying, look, go back to the centre ground, that's where you win or lose elections. The pile-on she received for speaking what you would actually more like was probably fairly commonsensical view was fascinating. This party is not yet ready, much in the same way that Labour wasn't ready in 2015 to have any sort of kind of wrestle with reality.
When you say Kemi's quite brittle, it reminds me quite a lot of Jeremy Corbyn, perhaps, and some of his reactions to journalists and being asked to, scrutiny and stuff, which he wasn't totally cool with. Now, obviously, yesterday, Rishi Sunak, who anyone, you may have forgotten him, he is around still. He's still the leader of the Tory party. We used to be a prime minister, in fact. Asked them all to stop arguing with each other. Mick says, with all the hopefuls be sitting in a row when Sunak delivers the failed leader's speech, the looks on their face will be hysterical. He did it yesterday, Mick, but I don't think any of them were in the room. Not many else was in the room either. So, he's going to be floating in and floating out. Now,
well, he's gone. He's been and gone. I mean, he basically dropped in for a kind of, a brush by with his own party. And then he's gone off to kind of ring more real estate agents in California, I think. Yeah,
it's not very much detached. I think is probably from the leadership that he's still got at the moment. But someone who is still really, before we go on to good news, there is someone who is still really, really keen on making sure that she is heard. A former prime minister who is not going away, and actually, I think she had her autobiography out some time ago as well. Liz Truss is back this afternoon. She's doing one event, Jason. Why isn't she going away? Why won't she flush? Why won't
we want it there? We need this kind of permanent reminder of all the failed Tory leaders. I think they should be made to appear on stage in a row, all of them, one after another. I mean, they should put Cameron, they should put May, they should put Johnson, and they should put Truss and Sunak, and they should make them sit in a long row of chairs.
They do that at remembrance, don't they?
Just to remind voters of who was running the country for the last 40 years and how bad it was. And I mean, it's great that Liz is popping up because, she was very important.
And we need reminding
Prime Minister.
No, she's only doing one event, mercifully, and then after that, she's going to Australia to remind them about what she thinks conservatism should be. After which, I suspect we'll have an influx of Australian former emigres all going, you know what? Let the black widows have her. My forebears came from here 300 years ago. I demand the right to return. So we'll see, won't we, how that all goes down. Thank you for that, Jason. Get us the comments, anybody. How do you feel about Boris Johnson's revelation about the Queen's possible cause of death? How do you feel about Liz Truss still hanging around? Are you as delighted as Jason appears to be, by how grim things are in the main party of opposition, or do you wish they would have been a little bit more professional? Do you have a preference for who would win the job of chief grifter? Do get into the comments and let us know.